Morning all. Yesterday we may have witnessed one of the greatest bit of opening preparations so far in the tournament, in the game Fabiano Caruana against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Caruana kicked off with e4, and Maxime didn't play his usual Sicilian defence, which he knows quite well, but tried to maybe surprise Caruana with the Rc1 defence. There's a lot of theory in this. We see the advanced variation, which had been popularised by the UK Grandmaster Nigel Short. So this system where white plays bishop e2 avoids the bishop exchange, which in very classical games, stemming back even from, for example, Nimzowitsch against Capablanca, there was a very famous game, Nimzowitsch against Capablanca, where white was totally outplayed on the light squares after playing bishop d3. But this is the modern treatment, and although it seems to give black an improved version of the French defence with the bishop outside of the pawn chain, there are some congestion issues usually with black's pieces here. So let's see, bishop e3, a very sharp move actually, tempting queen b6, also seen frequently as c takes d4 immediately. So here, queen b6, knight c3, and black now doesn't take this pawn here. In my live book, this is the main move actually. This is also, it has been played though, queen takes b2. It looks kind of scary to do that, but knight c6 in this game was played. Let's put on actually a Qb6 here. There's a lot going on, I think, theoretically as well. Queen takes b2, knight b5 seems to be the move. So we're threatening knight c7. And then here, white's got a wealth of options. Even d takes or rook b1. It seems white's got a lot of pressure here. I mean, this is a little bit similar to pawn sacrifices that occurred in the game, though. Losing both b2 and c2, it seems here that the fun starts for white in various aspects. But yeah, this is outside of the scope of the game, really. Let's go to the game. So knight c6, not taking that pawn immediately. White now castle. So he is actually offering, again, b2 and c2, it seems, on a play. Come and take my b and c pawns, he's saying to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Well, Maxime, no, this is not his like theoretical territory. He just done this whole opening as a kind of surprise here. But queen takes b2 has been played before in this particular position, and it was played now. And the move here now is queen e1, offering c2 as well. So at the moment, with the knight protected now, the rook is threatening to crash down to the 7th rank after rook b1, rook takes b7. If b7 is taken, then this whole diagonal here is weakened, and the bishop's outside of the pawn chain, so can't help c6. So that could be a big disaster if black doesn't play very precisely here. Just to give an example, let's say knight h6. So rook b1, offers c2, take on b7. And now this bishop b5 is a big threat. For example, rook c8, bishop b5. And here, this is just really dangerous. As if white gets more pressure on c6 via d takes and knight d4, that's end of game. So this is a big concern. Black actually played c takes d4 here, which has been seen before. So discouraging this because obviously the knight's hanging here. Bishop takes d4, now threatening things like knight takes d5, that discovery on the queen. Black takes on d4, knight takes d4, so white has given up that dark square bishop. But again, this idea of crashing to the 7th rank is pretty dangerous, especially with this diagonal here. We see now the move bishop b4, so not minding now bishop b5 check. Let's have a quick look. Bishop b5 check, so forfeiting casting rights here, but king f8 should be okay for black. This pin guarantees some simplification, or actually this very sharp queen sack. Rook b1, bishop takes c3, taking, no, it's not a queen sack, pardon me. Bishop takes e1, knight e7. This is okay for black. It seems it's about equal here. So bishop b5 check is not very effective in this position. The move played is knight db5. A little bit, we're kind of getting out of territory here. Rook b1 has been seen before as well, apparently. Rook b1 here. So say taking here, there's a simple pressure on black. Like after this position, this has been seen before. It seems white's quite comfortable here with comfortable compensation, beginning with bishop b5 check, and then knight takes f5 to smash up black's structure. So this kind of thing is okay for white as well, but white keeps a lot more tension in the position now with this knight d b5, a lot more tension, protecting c3. Rook b1 is now on the cards again, so difficult territory to try and improvise. The move bishop a5 is played. Rook b1, offering the c2 pawn as well. Really razor sharp preparation here. Now actually black is actually threatening queen takes b1, because you see that pin on c3. So if knight takes, we take on e1. So rook c1, queen b2. And this is the fascinating point of the game at move 15. And I did a bit of research here actually. I left the engine on for quite some time because people were claiming, because Caruana had been playing quickly up until move 17, that this has all been preparation. And my engine actually doesn't come up with this idea. It doesn't seem to be liked by engines. You might want to test this position yourself, but in practice, I would consider this relevant to a recent concept that I was implying actually on a Blitz video, that where there exists forcing moves or points of interest of further investigation, you could almost consider those positions as linked to knockout blows. And here, I mean, there are some forcing moves available. So is this position quite dangerous for black already? The forcing move continuation is g4. Now normally we don't like to move our pawns around the king, but white has got a huge lead in development. These guys are all back at base at the moment. It seems like a very wonderful idea, because it triggers off a one-way road really. Then after bishop g6, f4 now threatens f5, trapping the bishop. And if knight e7, there's knight d6 check to carry this on with f5. Now, before we get into that with g4, the engine suggestions include like knight a4. But again, this continuation, what we can say as humans is basically there's less tension here. There's less pieces on, even though white might be technically better. Even from an engine perspective, it's tiny. It's like 0.19 here. It's tiny. So this is not the idea of the continuation. The idea is to keep loads of tension on, loads of potentially winning pressure, lots of pieces on, means that if the opponent's actually lower on time, has used lots of time in the opening, then they're going to be even in bigger trouble. There's going to be bigger, more complex positions to try and handle. So even if this is slightly better for white, apparently it is, this is not the basis of the preparation. Okay, just to show you, even this position might be okay for white, but the basis of the preparation, and I think this is beautiful, is g4. I say it's beautiful because it introduces actually a lot of ideas and threats into the position immediately. Not just the f5 threat though, as I mentioned, but also rook f2, because that looks at the queen and threatens to punish her with knight c7 check and bishop b5 check to win that queen with two tempo gains like that. So it's becoming exceptionally complex. And even rook f2 is not even that simple from that perspective. There's also the idea of rook f1 and pursuing the f file. So the battery on the f file with f takes e6 later. So this is all kind of implied. So this position is exceptionally scary. Just to show just concretely the knight e7 idea. So here, knight d6 check. This is representing now a piece sack from black, if black wants to really do this, which is probably going to be investigated in other games maybe, if that's worth it. It seems technically equal from an engine point of view, but with white being a piece up, this looks a little bit suspicious. But unless, if the queens get exchanged here, is this completely winning for white? Well, queen takes is actually better for black here, so queen takes a5, check. This position is interesting. So if black wants to do a piece sack, yeah, there was a time there to do that with knight e7. It seems a bit speculative, but who knows? Needs research. Black actually in this game played bishop e4. So although the trapping the bishop has been avoided, or these knight d6 lines, we get this other idea of g4 and f4, which is this rook f2. Now white is actually threatening here. Knight c7 check, bishop b5 check to win the queen. So if we take a routine move, we see that. I'll show you the difference. Say a routine move like h5, check, and unless black wants to lose the rook for nothing, then that's bad in its own right. And if black takes, then white wins the queen with the check. Double attack on the king and the queen here. So the clever move from black in many respects was played here, but it seems he was on his own thinking here, and he was using lots of time. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave comes up with knight h6, but it's an absolutely razor sharp position. The idea is good in the respect of knight c7 check. There's now king e7, just protecting both rooks, ruling out the bishop b5. It's not check. And if white takes the rook here, this is actually better for black, this position. Apparently this is okay for black. You can see that this could backfire, these weaknesses around white's king, and there's still pressure on c3. There's still that horrendous pin, so rook c8 is coming up. So white would have to be careful here, and this looks grim to put a knight on f5. So that looks like great compensation for the exchange down. So in that respect, the idea is great, knight h6. But it's not. There's other pitfalls though to consider as well. It seems technically the best in this position was actually to play king f8 or queen b4 at certain depths. But it looks like with all these pieces on the board, there's a lot of tension here, a lot of possibilities to go wrong. I mean, let's look at this, going back to this idea of queen f1 for the f5 push. So even here, queen f1 has this idea potentially of f5 to crash down that f-file with this battery, and it's difficult for black to do anything here. Black really needs preparation for this position. Let's say knight h6 here. White can take on e4, rook b1, check. Well, even this, white doesn't have to go with the f-file now. There's other things on the cards. There's rook b5 to get out of that pin, though, to try and get out of the pin. But, for example, f5 here, and it shows the battery aspects of the rook and queen there. So this is a really mega dangerous position. So I wouldn't like to be playing black basically against someone prepared in this line after rook f2. The whole idea of g4 is actually, let's give credit here, this g4 idea in this position was apparently of Caruana's second and coach Vladimir Chuchelov. So apparently it was done a few months ago to face Mamdarov in this position. So if you're playing the white side of this variation, this is a fascinating concept, this g4. It's not actually arrived at, it seems, by engines that easily at all. But it creates a lot of dynamic, aggressive possibilities where there's lots of pieces on and there's lots of threats against black. So okay, let's go back. So rook f2, knight h6 was played, and here you might think, isn't the knight d6 check quite dangerous as well here? I'm not sure this does much. Knight d6, king f8 or king e7. Apparently this is okay for black, this position. Any bishop b5 here is not that harmful, it seems. And there's also, the queen doesn't even have to move here. There's bishop b6 pinning the rook. So okay, but what is the downside of knight h6? Well, white now just plays bishop d3, targeting this poor bishop on e4. So a double attack here and here instead, b2 and e4 instead. Black plays queen b1, and black is getting into serious trouble here after rook b1. Very serious trouble indeed. Where can the queen go in this position? she goes to queen. The queen goes to c5. I mean, there's the horrendous knight d6 check, surely, here. After queen e7, knight d6 check looks horrible for black, this position. And in fact, here, after taking here, white has in this position a strong forcing move in g5. If knight f5, rook takes b7. So the idea to get rid of that defense of f7. So they're working together against the king here on f7. That's horrendous looking, like this. Whoa, this could get to be real carnage now on this diagonal. So yes, unpleasant stuff on queen e7. So I think black is in very, very serious trouble. He plays queen c5. Okay, and we have knight takes e4, hitting the queen with this capture and also the bishop. And now, technically best seems bishop takes e1 to at least get this rook here after knight takes, bishop takes. And although white is material up, it's not a whole piece down like in the game continuation that we're about to see. Here, if knight takes g4, king f3, this really doesn't help black in losing the exchange there. So black would have to do something else, and this is clearly better for white. The two pieces for the rook is clearly better for white, and again this g5 here looks very useful even from this point of view. Yeah, so this is a position which Maxime Vachier-Lagrave doesn't really want for that simplification, even though he's getting that rook here. Instead, he elects to be an entire piece down, basically, after d takes e4, queen takes a5, threatening knight d6 check, winning the queen, means that e takes d3 cannot be played here. So black castled here, piece down, playing a piece down now against Caruana, who's 2801. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave 2768, not a bad rating, but he's a piece down. Bishop e2, e3 is played. Rook ff1, rook fc8, queen e1. The queen is coming usefully to this diagonal to support the e5 point, as well as f5 being on the cards. Queen d5. It looks as though rook c2 could be useful. That's extinguished with rook b2. f6. So although it seems as though this takes away d6 from the knight, with e takes f6, white will be not having a post on d6. Even this position is really good for white. This could have been played with queen h4. So unless black wants to lose f6, this is horrendous as well for black. This kind of thing after knight d4 and f5. There's different ways of winning. It's a piece up basically for black, this position. But Caruana preferred queen g3, just holding that potential d6 outpost with the pawn on e5. F takes. So plain sailing for white really. Knight d6 on the cards, quite easy to play. Rook f8 doesn't really get to white's king here. White just takes that and takes off this pawn now. Knight f7, and now actually after knight c3 on move 30, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave resigned here. It's a piece down. It's pretty hopeless. If he doesn't want to regain his pawn, let's see. Well, if he does regain, well, take a pawn here with a piece up, this is pretty trivial at this level of play actually. There's nothing going on here after knight e4. Nothing really going on. Rook c2, let's say king f1. And then white can actually even look forward to knight g5 there, and just it's all over, a piece up. So it's an amazing bit of preparation, this game basically, to offer both pawns and this idea of g4 for f4 later. If we go back to that, I think that's one of the best bit of preparations we've seen so far in this tournament. And unfortunate for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, you know, a whole day basically just for a bit of preparation of Caruana's to be unveiled. An incredibly difficult position to play. He might have considered the piece sack of knight e7, the implied piece sack, but yeah, this position is all sorts of threats now emerging, but switching to this bishop d3, just attacking this bishop on e4 here for this double attack. That was very clever. And yeah, it just seems black is in huge trouble. This d6 in particular, with this bishop over here, is a constant cause of concern. But yeah, and also the fact that this is a double attack as well. Knight takes e4 hits the queen and the bishop. So as I mentioned briefly, this line doesn't really promise black anything either. This is much better for black in all lines with all these multiple threats. If we ignore the pawn on g4, this position is grim, absolutely grim. If black played like knight f5 here, knight c7, and it's hopeless, all crashing through there as well. So yeah, what can we say? An amazing bit of preparation here. You wouldn't really want this position as black. It's just too much. There's too many pieces on. There's too many threats. The king's still in the center. The bishop is away from key squares. The knights have got all these access points. Yeah, fantastic bit of preparation to lose both of these pawns and this f-file stuff as well in reserve. Okay, comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.